Samuel chapter 15. We've been going through this crazy life of David, the ups, the downs, the brilliant moments, the tragic moments. He's having this problem with Absalom. We've been through all of that, how him and Absalom clearly have these issues. And stemming basically from his sin comes all of these issues. And we're going to see it in place tonight. And what God has said through Nathan keeps coming true. Now, Absalom is going to try to take the kingdom. He's going to try and be king. Obviously, when God anoints David to be king, that's who he anoints, right? Nobody's going to be able to take, and that's been this picture. When he was on the run from Saul, we saw how that if God makes you king, you're going to be king. You can't take the kingdom. You can't decide you want the kingdom. Absalom now, David's son, who has been upset, he's killed Amnon, and he's been upset, and he's been aloof, and he's been away, and him and his father clearly have issues. Absalom decides now is the time to be king. The problem with that is you're not coming against David, you're coming against the Lord, right? And so when you try to usurp the Lord's will or ways or authority, and people try that, they don't maybe admit it, but they do, it's never going to work out well. So there's this amazing moment now where David is going to be on the run, not from Saul, but from his own kid. He's on the run from his own child. It's wild, right? And look at verse 13. It says, a messenger soon arrived in Jerusalem to tell King David, all Israel has joined Absalom in a conspiracy against you. Okay, God is really good. They didn't have text messages back then, right? They didn't have phones. God has a way of getting his message to you regardless of whatever. Like God can get you to know or understand whatever he wants you to get or know or understand. David is there, and it says a messenger soon arrived, because remember in verse 11 it says Absalom took 200 men from Jerusalem as guests, but they didn't even know anything of his intentions. He sends for Ahithophel, which is Bathsheba's granddad, one of David's counselors, and there's all this movement. And what the, maybe you've been through it, maybe you haven't. You ever had people kind of hatch a plan against you? Yes. Whether it's at work or whether it's in your family or whether it's whatever situation, but people do things behind your back sometimes, right? The good thing is, especially if you're in the right spot, God sees that and knows that and can move against that. Thank goodness you don't have to know everything, that you don't have to be privy to everything, but there's this coming kind of behind the scenes, and a messenger arrives to tell David, and it's funny, right? Because there always seems to be kind of embellishment. He says all of Israel. That's not true. All Israel hasn't joined them. Now, is there a conspiracy? Yes. Is it all Israel? No. But the messenger comes and he says, look, there's a conspiracy coming against you. They've all joined Absalom. What a moment. And this again is a repercussion of what? It's a repercussion of his sin. Like whatever he thought he was gaining from Bathsheba, he's lost a ton. Like if David sat here tonight and tried to explain to you how much he gained from that and how much he lost. Sin does that, right? Now he's at war in his own family. Remember what God has promised. The sword will never leave your own family. And Absalom is a lesson to us. David's a lesson about, even spiritual people, even leaders can be not great fathers at times. They have their own issues. They have Absalom. Whenever we try to steal what God hasn't ordained, you're going to be in trouble. David stole a wife that wasn't his. That led to, whenever you try to steal position or whatever, and look what happens. All Israel has joined Absalom in a conspiracy against you. In that moment, when life happens and when people willfully, deliberately come against you, you better have God on your side. The only way to survive that, like let everyone come against me, but God, if God is with me, who can be against me? But you have to, the only way that you can be secure is to know you're on the right side of things. Like if you're Absalom, what do you have peace in? Hold on, if you're Absalom and you're coming against the plans of God, how can you possibly sleep at night? I mean, what? Absalom's hope is in him, other people. And look, if other people, here's what we have to learn too. If other people are quick to turn on David, they'll turn on Absalom. Like the same people you use to hatch your schemes are the same people who hatch them again. Like, it kind of like if you cheat with somebody, how would you ever not know that they won't cheat again? Like, there's that kind of weird stuff going on, right? And Absalom has no authority to do what he's doing. And so it says a conspiracy is coming, and he says, and you have to know you're on the right side of that. God has shown through Saul that David, and he's promised, he made a promise to David. He said, look, you're going to lose your son. The sword's always going to be against you. Your wives are going to do things out in public, which we're going to find out. But he said, I'm not going to take the kingdom from you. That was a promise of God. So when someone says to him, they're after your kingdom, David should know, you ain't going to get that. Because God's promised me he ain't going to take the kingdom from me like he did Saul. He said, and at first, this is why you study and read more stuff outside of what you think. At first, I thought this was kind of weak of David. He runs. But it's actually interesting what he says, and I think it's actually strength. He said, we must flee at once or it will be too late. At first, I thought, man, just stand your ground. Like, what are you running for? But look at what he says. David urged his men, hurry, if we get out the city before he arrives. What does he say? Both we and the city of Jerusalem will be spared from what? So actually, he's not, it's 2 Samuel 15 verse 14. He's not actually running away just to protect himself. He's running away because if he stays, he knows there's going to be carnage in Jerusalem. He knows that if he doesn't run and a fight ensues, people are going to get hurt. It's actually noble. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like, instead of getting in this brawl in the middle of Jerusalem and setting off a war, he wants to leave so that, because if David isn't in Jerusalem, no one in Jerusalem is going to get harmed. Absalom has one target. His dad. That's it. He just wants to get David, because if you get David, you get the kingdom, all that. So David says, look, for the sake of everybody else, for the sake of Jerusalem, we need to get out so that's actually noble. Verse 15, we are with you, his advisors replied. Do what you think is best. That's fantastic that you have advisors. But he should know by now that if your only real hope and trust is who? Because, man, advisors will come and go. And sometimes your advisors are what? Yeah, they're not great. I mean, it's great that he has advisors. But, man, you better have more than advisors. You better have God. His advisor said, do what you think is best. That's a kind of risky thing to say even to King David. Do what you think is best. Well, sometime he thought sleeping with another woman and killing her husband was a good idea. So, do what you think is best. So the king and his household set out at once. And this is crazy. Remember, part of his issue is lust and all of that. He's got wives and he's got concubines. And it says, all of his household left apart from what? He leaves 10 of his concubines to keep the palace in order. It's kind of a weird deal, right? He's like, hey, we're all going to go and get out of here, but you 10 concubines, by the way. If you need to, I mean, that, you know how many concubines he should have? None. He's got 10. And if you ever really wanted to know how important they are, there's like, hey, you 10, you just, and watch. Don't read on yet, because it's crazy what happens to them. And it's exactly what God said. I don't know why he leaves them there. I guess he's bothered about the palace. He leaves 10 of them to take care of the palace. I guess maybe. But the thing is, like, if Absalom comes after the palace, the concubines aren't going to. So I don't know exactly what he's doing. I don't know why he leaves the 10. I mean, it's not like they can guard the palace. They can clean it and keep it nice and all that. But if Absalom comes after the palace, 10 concubines aren't going to stop him. I don't know. You figure it out and let me know. But the fact is, he leaves 10 concubines in the palace, so he's obviously got. It's kind of funny, right? Like, he has this real affection for the palace, and though he's ready to leave, he still kind of wants to keep his palace. Well, the only way you lose the palace, really, is if you lose the kingdom. He can't lose this kingdom. He can't. The king and his people set out on foot, and they paused at the edge of the city. This is a monumental moment. Life sometimes slows down. You ever been in a moment where life slows down, where you really get to think through where you're at and how you got here? The only reason David really is struggling with this is because of what he's done. Like, all of this is a ramification of his life. Had he not done what he'd done, he wouldn't be in this position. He's caused all kinds, like, he hasn't been a perfect father. He's got issues with Absalom. Absalom's got issues with him. And there's this family feud going on, and he's right there. And it says, they set out on foot, and they paused at the edge of the city. There's this pause. Life slows down enough, and he must have thought, how in the world did I end up here? I'm the king of Israel, and I'm standing here on foot, on the run. And to any question of, where's God? Why is God? Hold on, it's not where's God. It's what were you doing? Remember a long time, well, it seems like a long time ago. Remember what we said previously? Like, just stop. Like, when you saw Bathsheba, stop. Don't go any further. When you're invited to your house, stop. When you slept with her, stop there. He went after Uriah. He could not and would not what? Stop. We said that a lot, right? And that's been running through. Just stop. You ever look in your life and say, man, I blasted through like 7 stop signs that God gave me. I wish I'd stopped on number 1. And he stands at the edge of this city in this monumental moment. And look what it says. So let David's troops move past to lead the way. This is amazing. So remember, they wanted a king. And God was like, you don't want a king. They're like, oh no, we want a king. Hold on. All right, if you have a king, he gets, like we'll read it in Amos on Sunday, he gets the first share of the crops. Like, if there's a crop shortage, you can guarantee something. The king ain't going to go short. Like, if half the crop goes, it's like tithing. The king got the first bit. So if there's crops, guess who's getting it? The little peons, you don't get it. The king gets it, right? He said, and remember what he said? He will take your girls, your ladies to what? To help you, to feed you. But he will also take your men and what? Make them fight for you. You will lose men. You will lose boys because the king sends them to battle. And it's not the king. David is going to be protected because look at what it says. David's troops have to lead the way. David's troops are going to lead the way. So when arrows come and things, guess who gets them? Not David. And when you peel it back, and this is dramatic, but do you see how everybody else is getting involved because of what David's kind of done? Because of his shortcomings as a father, as a believer. I mean, he's a giant. And if this can happen to a giant, then it can happen to us, can't it? Like, maybe it's not this obvious, but our lives, when we mess around in sin, it costs other people. All of these troops are now fighting because Amnon raped his half-sister. It's not just David. But there's all this sin going on. And guess what? Newsflash. When you rape your half-sister, it's going to cause issues. There's all this baggage and all this. And sin has caused all this. And if you want to know why Absalom and David can't get along, it's because sin has brought so much baggage. If you look at fractured relationships in your life, sin brought baggage. Like when you're at odds with people, sin has brought baggage and neither one knows how to deal with it. And Absalom and David. You would think that David's son and him, like everyone would want David as a father, wouldn't you? You would think. And then this is amazing. God is so this is why God is really hard to kind of figure out. Is he gracious? Yeah. Is he merciful? Yes. But is there a line that when you cry? Look, David is in the midst of kind of reaping what he sowed. Absalom is, all of them are. So he stops, his troops go ahead of them, and look at what it says. There were 600 Gittites, Philistines, who had come with David from Gath along with the king's bodyguard. I want you to see this, how amazing God is and how much God can do. How many times have you read something about the Philistines and said, well, they're good people? Their giant was Goliath. The Philistines, in virtually every verse you read about the Philistines, what do you come away thinking? Yeah, not good. They're the enemy. They're people you don't want to be. It was crazy. Remember, David found sanctuary in the Philistines. Every time, like if someone calls you a Philistine, it's not a compliment. But there's this amazing moment where in the midst of everything, it's all, like your son is coming against you, you're on the run again, and God has this way of speaking to you and showing who he is. Out of nowhere. He's had advisors, and this is what we were talking about on Sunday. You need people who are going to help your burdens. And God is going to move in a way. These Philistines showed up the day before. They show up, right? God's timing is impeccable. These Philistines tried to find refuge. They're already on, they've left Philistine country. They're refugees. They're trying to find a home. And the first thing they find when they get home, when they get to Israel, is they're on the move again. So now they're an escapee and an escapee again, right quick. Like, imagine escaping your home, going somewhere, and then having to escape again. Probably not what you want to do, right? So, and they've got to make a decision. If you're in Israel, everybody's got to make a decision. Who do I follow? Do I follow Absalom or do I follow David? Now, you could have an argument about Absalom and David, but the point is that God has anointed David, so it's really Absalom or God. If you go with Absalom, you're going against God. So it becomes pretty easy to pick. But many Israelites, you can see why Bathsheba's relatives want to go with Absalom. See, that's sin that caused baggage. If you're related to Bathsheba and what David did, you can see why people would be like, I don't like that David guy. Look at what it says. The king, David, turned to Ittai, the captain of the Gittites. This is one of those moments, like a Philistine becomes this amazing character. Why? And David looks at him and says, what? Why are you coming with us? And maybe he's like, this. I mean, the alarm bells must have been ringing, right? Why is a Philistine trying to come fight with us? That's not right. Go on back with your men to King Absalom. To King Absalom. For you are a guest in Israel, a foreigner in exile. They're a foreigner, they're in exile. You arrived only yesterday, and now should I force you to wander with us? David looks at them, and he says, why don't you go back to the king? I think that's a bit of, sarcasm, sour grapes, kind of making a point. He says, you're in Israel, you're a foreigner, you're in exile. He says, you got here yesterday. Should I force you to wander with us? In other words, he says, I don't know exactly where we're going or what we're doing. I just know we're leaving Jerusalem and we're going wandering. Now, thankfully, God has trained David in the wilderness. He knows all about that from Saul. You ever been there where you got through something and you never thought you'd have to go through it again, and here you go again? I mean, as David leaves, don't you think Saul is right in his mind? Like, man, Lord, last time I was on the run for 10 years or something. Like, King Saul came after me for 10. Remember there was that day when they were on the same mountain? And it's like, he's got his palace, he's done all this stuff, and he's on the run again. He's on the run again. You tell me where all his mess-ups got him. Nowhere. Look at what it says. Should I force you to wander with us? In other words, he could force them, but he's not going to. I don't even know where we'll go. Go on back, take your troops with you, and look at what he says. Go on back, Ittai, take all your troops, and he says, may the Lord show you his unfailing love and faithfulness. This is an amazing moment. David's like, go back, and I pray for you that God will show you his unfailing love and faithfulness. Like when you go back, when you leave me, I want God to show you his unfailing love and faithfulness. And then Ittai said to the king, I find this really interesting. What did he say? I vow by what? The Lord. But what do they normally say? When they're foreign and when they don't understand, what do they normally say? I vow by your Lord. He says, I vow by the Lord. And by your own life. Think about how much, by the way, Who's behind this? You think the devil's behind this? No. Who's behind this? God is behind this. Because right when you need him, when you're standing there and you have to go on the run again, and the enemy is like in your mind and in your head, guess what? God shows up and says, I'm going to help you. But I'm going to help you in ways that you never dreamt of. I'm going to help you in such a way that you know it's me. You ever been there? Like, I'm going to take care of this, but I'm going to do it in such an amazing way that you're not going to be able to give credit to anybody else. And David has to have this wild moment. He's standing there, he's watching his troops, and he sees all these Philistines. And he's like, why don't you just go back? I'm not going to make you wander with us. I don't even know where we're going. Now remember, the whole problem in Israel at the moment is loyalty to who? It's loyalty to David, and really it's loyalty to who? To God. You've got these uncircumcised Philistines who are like, we're all in for God. I don't know another, I might be wrong. I don't know another passage where Philistines are in this good a shape. This guy is a Philistine. He's a leader, and he says to him, listen to what he says. I vow by the Lord and by your own life that I will go wherever you go, no matter what happens, whether it means what? You can't read that without realizing the bigger picture of that. That's the exact call of Christianity. That's the exact call of Jesus on your life. That's meant when we come to the cross, that's exactly what we say. I will go wherever you go, no matter what happens. That's what God's looking for. Anybody, somebody who will go where he goes. Not on your own, not doing an Absalom and jumping ahead. Sometimes if the Lord's over there, you don't want to find yourself over here. Like if the Lord's calling you somewhere and you're trying to avoid that, it's going to be rough. He says to David, and really, it's amazing. This Philistine he says by the Lord and by, I think he understands that David isn't just David. David has God on his side. And he somehow, how does God do that? I have no idea. But God has got the mind. And by the way, this should encourage us. God can change the mind and the heart of anybody. Like if God needs someone in your life to think a certain way, guess who's strong enough to do that? God is. And this Philistine says to David, I'm going to go wherever you go. And by the way, in this context, he doesn't even know where he's going. And by all he knows, they could be dead in the morning. Unless he really understands the promises of God about David. No matter what happens, whether it means life or death, that's a call. That's what a witness is, a martus, a martyr. That's our call to Jesus. That's exactly, there are moments where I promise you, there are moments that are going to come, that are going to hurt. I can't tell you how amazing it is, how much like spiritual electricity you'll find if when you get to a rock cold moment, you will get down on your knees and say, Lord, when I signed up, I told you, wherever we go, whatever happens, no matter what happens, whether it means life or death, I told you, I'll be with you. If you can do that, it'll change your life. Because when we're in trouble, when things happen, when we get a phone call we never wanted, our first reaction sometimes is not good. You can beat the devil by saying, God, I told you. There's something special about saying to Jesus, this is what I signed up for. I don't know where we're going, and I don't know what's going to happen, but I promised you at Calvary, this is what I'll do, and I'm going to do it. It's an amazing moment, and it's amazing for David, and you talk about like carrying one another's burdens. It's funny, right? It's funny how Absalom's turning on him, but God's like, yeah, your son's coming against you, but I can even use Philistines. Not just to help you fight battles. This wasn't about a fight. It was about that spiritual heart of David. I believe this meant something to David. He said, and David says, okay, come with us. Now it's a risky maneuver, because if this guy's just... Lots of people will. You know why David's such in danger? Because they think that if you kill David, you get in favor with the king. You see, if Absalom's going to be king, then if you kill David, you're the problem is God's going to protect him and kill you. He says, come with us. Ittai and his... Think about that. 600 men and their families, what? 600 men and their families. How do you explain to your kid, you've just come from exile, and Mummy, where are we going? Who's this dude? Well, why? We just got somewhere. We're going again? Yeah, we're going again. Where are we going? No idea. What's going to happen? No idea. Who's going to take care of us? And the only answer they can give is, here's David. He's a king of Israel. But more, it's not about David. You can't just... Man, I believe, at least Ittai has some knowledge of, I think that's important. I vow by the Lord, not by your Lord. I vow by the Lord, like him, not by any Philistine god. And they have to explain to their kids, the only reason we can go with David is because David's going with... Remember what his prayer for them was? I want you to see God's unfailing love and faithfulness. Well, you know who's seeing that? David is, the Israelites will, and the Philistines even get to. And imagine, it doesn't say, but imagine the impact these Philistines would have going back home. There was listen to this. And see, he said everyone's against you. That's not true. The devil likes to over-exaggerate a bit and make you feel like everyone's against you. There was deep sadness throughout the land as the king and his followers passed by. This is what the devil loves. What does the devil love to take away from us? Joy. You imagine the scene. The king, David, your hero, your champion, your giant slayer, is walking out of the city. And they're seeing this king who is on the run again. And they're watching from their house. And you see the devil loves to use that. I thought he was king, Mom. He is. Well, why is he running? And it says there was deep sadness as the king and his followers passed by. The king and these men, these Philistines and these others, they crossed the Kidron Valley and went out toward the wilderness. Man, David is now again stuck in the wilderness. I wonder if that's us. You ever been in the wilderness? God got you out and you're back in it? And the first question we ask is, why? And you know what the answer is? You. Here's the yes, that's exactly it. Sometimes wilderness experiences will build on each other. In fact, so it's not the fact that you messed it up. It's God taught you one thing. Now he's going to add to that. And you grow, right? But sometimes you get in the wilderness and God teaches you. He takes you out and guess what? You didn't get it. So guess what's coming? Again, God is very patient, which is great for us, right? But he's also patient in discipline. If God wants you to learn something, I promise you he's going to outweigh you. Like, we can do 8 wildernesses. We can do 12. God has never said, poor old thing doesn't want another wilderness. Don't do that. Oh, you get another one. We're that arrogant and ignorant, right? Oh, I don't care. Give me another wilderness. Careful what you ask for. And David finds himself again in this wilderness. Partly to strengthen him, and God's trained him, and God's done all that. But I don't think he has to be in this wilderness if he'd gone another way. If Amnon had gone another way and not raped his half-sister. He finds it. But let's be honest. God's anointed David. God's still got an affection for David. David, though he's in the wilderness, it's not like God has rejected him or departed from him, right? God's still David's man. Or David's still God's man. 600 Philistines. They go out toward the wilderness. Abiathar and Zadok, the priests, and the Levites take the ark of the covenant of God and set it down beside the road. They offered sacrifices there until everyone had passed by. This is kind of funny, and this is where David is smart again. They take the ark, remember, is a picture of what? So God's presence and provision and authority, right? You have the commandments, you have the manna, you have Aaron's budding rod. You have all this, and God was meant to, reside over it, the mercy seat and all that. But what they're doing is, they're taking the ark almost to guarantee what? They're almost using the ark as a lucky rabbit's foot. Like, if we take this, we're going to win. Well, that's been provably wrong, because they took it and they lost. And then the enemy had it and God started to mess them up. Remember with Dagon and all of that? And so they're sacrificing until everyone had passed by. That's kind of good, but it's kind of like, hey, if I do this, you'll do that, right? David instructed Zadok, the priest, to take the ark of God back into the city. He's like, take that back to Jerusalem. We're not going to play this game of taking God around as a lucky rabbit's foot and expect. He said, he will bring me back to see the ark and the tabernacle again. What an amazing, he knows he's coming back. He's like, I'm not worried about not going back to see the temple again or to see the tabernacle again, to see the ark. But if he is through with me, then let him do whatever he seems best to him. He's like, if I don't go back, then that's fine. But God is going to do we're not going to do that. We're not going to take the ark and act like, he's like, take it back to Jerusalem. This is this moment of faith, of courage. Like, God's going to do what he's going to do. Whatever he seems best to him, I'm going to follow him. The king told Zadok the priest, here's my plan. You and Abiathar should return quietly to the city with your son Ahimaaz and Abiathar's son Jonathan. I will stop at the shallows of the Jordan River. This is where it gets crazy. And this passage, this kind of thing is really difficult for me because, well, I'll show you why in a minute. But so David is on the run, and when you're on the run and you're in a military kind of coup, you have to come up with what? You have to come up with a plan, right? Now, hopefully you get the plan from God. And so David says, he's got the priests with him, Zadok and Abiathar. He says, hey, here's what we're going to do. Go back to Jerusalem and take your sons with you, and I'm going to stop at the shallows of the Jordan River and wait for a message. He says to the priest, take you and take your boys and go home. Go to Jerusalem, and he says, I'm going to be at the shallows of the Jordan River. I'm going to be right there. And at the crossing point of the wilderness is where he's at the low point, at the crossing point. I'm going to stand. It's kind of a wild thing. It's almost like when I get the news, I'll know what? I'll know whether to go that way or... And he says, I'm going to wait for a message. Let me know what happens in Jerusalem before I disappear into the wilderness. All the time, whilst you trust the priests and all that, again, you've really got to trust who? Because in war, in big stakes things, you don't really know who you can trust, do you? But he trusts them, and he says, tell me what's happening. So Zadok and Abiathar took the ark of God back to the city, and they stayed there. This is absolutely amazing. David walked up the road that led to where? This man, the Mount of Olives is fascinating. This is where Jesus will come back and stand on. The Mount of Olives is right by where he died and all of that. Like the Mount of Olives, if there's one place, like, I'm not really into history in that, but if they did a thing on the mount, man, this place is fascinating to me. Like, if you could just go to it, like the Mount of Olives. It says he walked up the road. He said to them, I'll meet you there. Well, I'll get a message. And David walks up the Mount of Olives, and it says he was what? He's weeping as he went. I think he's got all kinds of emotions going, and he's crying. His head was covered, and his feet were bare as a sign of mourning. He's mourning. He's in mourning for his son. He's in mourning for probably his sin. He's in mourning. He knows that this is a difficult moment. This is normal for them. This isn't really a sign of weakness. This is what they did. This is when they showed their like kind of need of God, their repentance, their desire for things to change. It was kind of an outward symbol of what was going on in their inner man, right? When the king, and by the way, when the king's head is covered and his feet are bare and he's walking, something's up. This is the king, and he's acting like a pauper. But this is what they did, right? When they wore the clothes of ashes and the sackcloth. Sackcloth was not what you wanted to wear. It itched, but it was this sign of God. It was kind of this call of dependence, of repentance, of we need your help. And the people who were with him covered their heads and wept as he climbed the mountain. Some of yours says worship, doesn't it? Oh, it's next. It's not, I skipped ahead. Never mind. They wept and they climbed. So imagine this scene. They're all weeping. They're all crying. But again, it's not like they've given up. It's their culture. When someone told David his advisor Ahithophel was now backing Absalom, you see, Ahithophel was David's man, right? But he's turned. Man, don't be careful who you trust. And make sure that all you trust isn't in people. Because whatever you put your trust in, God's going to show the weakness of. Put your trust in money and God will come after it. Put your trust in politics and he'll show you that wasn't it wouldn't behoove God to bless what you're turning against him with, would it? Why would he bless that? Ahithophel is just a typical person. He sees it. He's got some inner. If he's related like we think he is to Bathsheba, you can kind of see it. Right? You can kind of understand why he's perturbed and he took his revenge, right? And so he has turned on David and he now is following Absalom. And David immediately prays. And what's funny is he doesn't pray that they'll all die, or he asks God for help. Look at what he says. Let Ahithophel, who's the advisor, who's this wise guy who people listen to, he says, let him give Absalom foolish advice. It's kind of a cool prayer, right? God, you know him, and Absalom thinks he's going to advise him. God, help him give him bum advice. Help him talk crazy to him. Think about what David is saying and how much David believes. God, I need you to move in the... Look, I can't do anything about Ahithophel, but you can. Move in his mind. Change his mind. Give him this wrong, like this weird advice, and that's how we'll do it. It's kind of an amazing prayer, isn't it? That's how much he believes God can do that. Do you believe that? When people are coming against you, do you believe that God can make them do foolish things? That God can make them do things that are actually for their defeat, not for their victory? They reached the spot at the top of the mountain. Again, the top of the Mount of Olives. This is where Jesus is coming. At the top of the Mount of Olives, where people worship God. And at first I couldn't figure out if that was where they worship God. But I believe this is where they're mourning. They walk up, they get to the top of the mountain, and I think David and his men just start to what? Just start to worship God. See, this is kind of that, you can grieve, but not like those without hope. Like you can be upset, you can cry, you can not feel great, but man, they just bust out in worship. They just bust out. Again, it looks like to us like if you had no shoes on and you know, and we were walking around Macon, we'd think, man, they've lost the plot. Yeah, they've lost it. Like they start to worship. David is this extreme character. Like there's moments you're like, this guy is the best guy that ever lived. And then there's other moments you're like, what are you doing? It's all of us, right? Yeah. Maybe we just not get the A+ that he does. They worship God. David found Hushai the Archite waiting for him. Hushai had torn his clothing and put dirt on his head as a sign of mourning. So he meets this Hushai, his friend. We'll learn later he's his friend. And Hushai had torn his clothing and put dirt on his head as a sign of mourning. David told him, if you go with me, you'll only be a burden. But he says to him, return to Jerusalem and tell Absalom, I will now be your advisor. This is where it gets weird for me. It's brilliant in some ways, but I've always taught, and I believe with all my heart, it's never okay to lie. So if it's never okay to lie, that means it's never okay to lie. So I don't know how to even teach this passage, honestly. Like, I kind of get it, but if that's going to be the principle, then that has to be the principle. You can't say, well, it's okay to lie in this one verse. I mean, then you're all over the place, right? It's kind of like you can steal just once, it's fine. No, hold on. But look at what he says. He hatches this plan again. David keeps having to make these plans. And again, you hope they're based on the Lord. But again, we come to like, here's what you struggle with. What happens, and this is an honest question that you have to try and wrap your head around. What happens if you're called to go to a foreign mission field where if they know you're a Christian, they'll kill you? And they look at you in the face and say, why are you here? Now, under the guise of I'm a teacher, you can say that. But that's not really, that's what we do, right? We go in as teachers or whatever to give us a place to actually. But you see, that's what I'm saying. Like, at that moment, I think it's a challenge for people to say, I'm here to be a missionary. But we assume that God's just going to kill them straight dead. Like, if God wants to use you as a missionary, he'll protect you. Like, it's easier said than done. I can't tell you what I'd say because I haven't been in that position. But that's where this kind of comes into play. Like, is it okay for me to say, well, I'm here to teach? Well, you are. But you have to ask, is that okay in situations? Like, if your wife asks you a question and you tell her half the truth, is that okay? Like, yes, you are here to teach, but the real reason, she got that right quick. The real reason you're here is to lead people to who? To Jesus. Yeah, I get why they don't want to say that. But that's what I'm saying. You think about that. And if you're going to, man, I just believe that if you tell the truth, that God's somehow going to work that out. Because if I'm lying, what am I saying? Like, well, I was scared that God wouldn't protect. I mean, none of that makes sense. That's a whole, will be on something to think about. But he says, look, you can't come with me. But he says, you can do me a favor. Go to Jerusalem and tell Absalom, I'll now be your advisor, because I was your father's advisors in the past. What he's getting him to do is put on that he's going to give him advice. He wants to go and portray that I'm here to help when he's not. It's kind of weird, right? So now David has people turning on him. So now he's going to send his man to turn on Absalom. You figure out if the Lord told him to do this or not. That's a whole 2 hour. If you want to spend the 2 hours trying to figure it. Yeah, like people say Rahab had to lie. I disagree. Anyway, let's move on. Someone take Holly out with you. And look, he says, I want you to be his advisor because he'll believe it because he was my advisor. You can frustrate and counter Ahithophel's advice. All right? So Ahithophel is there to give advice to Absalom. And this man, his friend, is to, Hushai, is to go in there and basically frustrate the plans. Look at what he says. Then you can frustrate and counter Ahithophel's advice. Zadok and Abiathar, the priests, are there. Tell them the plans that are being made to capture me. And they will send their sons, Ahimaaz and Jonathan, to find me and tell me what is going on. So he says, find the priests, tell them what's happening. When the priests find out, they'll tell the kids, they'll come to me. Okay. So David's friend Hushai returned to Jerusalem, getting there just as Absalom arrived. So the question becomes, is that kosher? And that's what you have to figure out. Because he's sending his man in to say one thing and actually it's deceit is what it is. It's trickery. Yeah, he's a spy. Now, does it work? Yeah, it works. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? But actually, you'll find that if you want to look at it and say it worked, Ahithophel comes out with this advice. Later, we'll read, and his friend foo-foos it, and they go, anyway, it works out in David's favor. But David has been promised he'll be king, and the kingdom won't leave. But there's this wild... Anyway, he sends his friend, and his friend goes. We'll learn maybe next week or the week after about how this happens, and that it happens just the way David wants it to happen. But I'll leave it there. That okay, and we'll do the business meeting real quick. Everyone else is gone. I'll go through the financials with you. Diane's not here, so we won't have a clerk's report, but we're going to survive. It'll be all right. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts about that?